Our stats say that it will go for 110% of the asking price when it's remarketed. So exactly like the example that you've just cited.
So we often say, you're no longer selling your house, you're selling your buyer's next house. But when you're sat across the table from a potential client, like what's a nice way of saying we need to clear your junk?
Hello and welcome to the Complete Agent podcast, where we aim to inform and entertain our listenership. Today, I'm not joined by the Northern Monkey. That's not me, that's David Warburton. I am joined by my lovely colleague and friend, James Kendall, and a very interesting industry guest as well, Elaine, who we shall introduce in a short while. So first of all, as per the protocol, JK, do you want to give me your week? How has your week been?
How was that for you, mate? That intro, was that stressful?
Scary.
That week's been good. I was just saying to you off air, we've had a really good month, despite it being relatively quiet, which is a bit of a strange thing to say. I think, when you're in at the sort of premium end of the market, 7 or 8 sales can make your month. And we've had some really strong fees. We've got some great listings coming on. I'm not anticipating August to be a super busy month in terms of sales, but we are getting a lot of listings prepped and ready for September. So a lot of staging and styling being done ahead of steam, so which we'll get into a bit more today. But yeah, no, it's been positive all around. We had a great couple of chains, actually, 2 really massive chains go this week as well. So no, life's pretty good at the moment. How about you?
Yes, very good, thank you. Busy, really. Me and Elaine were just saying before we came on how, there's this, maybe it's a misconception or a traditional period in the market in the summer when things go quieter, but we're definitely not quiet, even though all the schools have now broken up. I got back from Mallorca back end of last week. Whilst I was away last week, I agreed one at 1.6, 100 grand over marketing price I agreed it from Holiday, which was a superb result. Only been on the market 2 weeks. Also, another absolute beauty of a sale this week on at 2.15, sold it for 2.2 to chain-free buyer. Phil agreed one yesterday at 600, and we've got, must be another 4 or 5 that are going to sell. They've got second viewings, people super keen. We agreed a provisional sale on one at 850, got 860 for it. That was... it's basically a property that we had on the market. They took it off, but we've really impressed them. So we said, look, if we get anyone who wants to view it, would you take a viewing? We did. They took a viewing. Those people couldn't proceed, but I'm a massive advocate of letting people in who can't proceed in this market because you can't be picky. She loved it, the lady, put hers on the market. She's got a second viewing this coming weekend, and we've agreed, hopefully, what will be a proceedable sale next week. Listings. In the last 3 weeks, we've not really been instructed on anything, but that's good. I was away for 2 weeks. We've had a big change in the company. We've got a massive amount of listed stock and listed fees on the board. We've got loads in photography, and I'm just trying to stall people for coming on until September or having some serious price conversations with sellers before they come onto the market to make sure that they're coming on realistically. We have recruited we've got a new valuer role, and we've recruited that this week, which is really exciting. So, all good, JK. All good.
I was going to say on the price realignments as well, we talked about that last week. And that's one thing we've been really strong on, I think, which has helped our result. If you look at our sales that we've banked this month, not banked this month, sales that we've agreed this month, the main sort of bulk of it is stuff that's had price realignments.
Yeah.
And what's interesting with some of it is that it's come down a price band, got interest, and it's that classic of selling in competition, not in isolation, and having 2 or 3 competing buyers and going from, say, 1.25 to 1, and then going offers over 1, and then ended up at nearly 1.2. So, there's an argument to say, if you can get it right, get it keen, get competing buyers, it will naturally find its level, and sometimes overachieve where it may not have got as good elsewhere, if that makes sense. So, shall we introduce our wonderful guest today? I've written a script. Do you want to hear it?
I do.
Not really, but I'm sure you're going to do it anyway.
Today, we are delighted to welcome Elaine Penhaul, founder and creative director of Lemon and Lime Interiors, one of the most sought-after interior design consultancies working with high-end residential properties across the UK. Elaine has built her reputation transforming luxury homes into market-ready showcases that not only capture buyers' imagination, but consistently deliver enhanced sale prices for her clients. With an impressive portfolio spanning Georgian period properties through to contemporary new builds, she has become the go-to designer for discerning estate agents and developers who understand that exceptional presentation is a non-negotiable in today's competitive luxury market. Elaine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction, James. Thank you.
Well, thank ChatGPT. So I've done a bit of an intro, but for everyone that doesn't know you, what's your name? Where'd you come from? My name's Elaine, but you know.
My name's Elaine. And I'm founder of Lemon and Lime Interiors, and we are a staging business. We work nationally. Our niche in the market is high-end property, and we work everywhere. In that market. So we prepare property for sale, whatever it needs, from decorating to new carpets to doing some gardening, right the way through to zhuzhing before photos or fully furnishing where it needs it. So anything that you as high-end agents need to get the most marketable property that we possibly can with you. So
can I ask you what drew you to interior design specifically for sort of high-end homes, and how did it all come about?
Absolutely nothing drew me to it. It was an accident, like so many people. I'm a mathematician by background, so my degree's in maths. I was working very happily for many years, business coaching in corporates and police forces primarily. My developer husband left in 2008, 2009, and I ended up with a chunk of property, which as part of the settlement, which was part residential, part commercial, and 4 small children to feed. So I kind of had to learn fairly quickly how to manage those properties because, we were just a global crash, couldn't sell the stuff for love nor money. So really had to find the best rentals, so on. And it seemed to me common sense, really, to tidy up, put new carpets in when tenants moved out, maybe do a bit of decorating. And very quickly found that I was finding tenants without having any void periods, that very quickly it was apparent that people wanted to rent the properties that I'd got because they always looked great.
Can we unpack that a little bit then? So so if you go back in the time machine, what does that look like from like a visual perspective?
So from a visual perspective, you mean for rental property that I started out doing? Yeah.
So what is one of those, if I walk through the door so where it all started, what does that look like? Was it quite sort of a basic level in terms of just a carpet and refurb, or was that like fully staged?
Very often, in the very, very early days, it was very basic. I had a good portfolio of relatively low-end rentals, and tenants would move out. They'd maybe been in there for, 6, 7, 10 years, something like that. And the carpets were just sticky and horrible, and the kitchens were tiny and dated, and the bathrooms were just grotty. Because people had been in there. So, just taking those out and replacing with things that weren't super expensive, but just looked right and were functional, worked. Carpets, and we still do it now, you put in great underlay. The carpet doesn't have to be super expensive. It just feels really nice. And white paint everywhere was what it looked like in those days.
So just doing the basics well kind of thing.
Just doing the basics really well, making sure that all the repairs were done as well. Where the door handle was broken, that actually you put it, you replaced it, making sure that where the shower screen was coming away from the wall, that was all fixed, so that when people went in, they felt like it was home rather than it was a tatty rental property.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you go from managing your own sort of rental portfolio and you know, obviously spotting where the weaknesses were and I guess doing the basics really well to then what you have today, which is, you know, the multifaceted, successful designing and furnishing company. Where did that go from 0 to 100?
Yeah, because it really did. And I think that it wasn't even really a gap in market because I had no idea that home staging existed anywhere else in the world until I'd done several properties for friends. I was very lucky because the property that I was living in at that point was it was a 15th century beamed cottage that had been added on to in every era possible until I bought it when we were still married, and we'd taken it more or less down to the sandstone, bottom of the wall that everything sat on. We propped up the beams on acro props. We'd had to get a master craftsman out of retirement to do the eyebrow windows, you know, the whole works, and had spent more or less 17 years rebuilding this thing. It was just in the most terrible mess, but it stood in 10 acres in a very nice village. And I learned a huge amount about building, about plumbing. I know an awful lot more about drains than anybody should really know about drains. And in the process, got a really good group of trades around me, and just learned to ask a lot of questions. I had, because of the village that we were in, I had friends that had very nice houses. One of whom moved to Budapest with her husband and children in 2010. No, they moved just before that. The house was then rented for a little while. She then brought it onto the market winter of 2010, 2011. It was overgrown. It looked tatty. It looked, you know, they just weren't getting the interest that they wanted on it. And I phoned her and said, you can't possibly sell it looking like that. And she said, well, you're going to have to do it because I haven't got time to come home. So we did that one. I just gathered a group of friends around basically, and a load of white paint, and we painted, put in a little bit of furniture. I'd just moved at that point, so I had a bit of furniture left over, put in a bit of furniture, and that sold again in a horrible market at the beginning of 2011. You might remember, but horrible market. For 60 grand more than they ever imagined, than the agents ever imagined they were going to get for it. So, of course, at that point, agents started coming to me and saying, could you just come and tell my client I can't sell their house looking like that? And I'm going, you know, because they didn't want to lose the instruction. You know, they didn't want to lose the instruction by apparently being critical of the presentation of a house. You know, it was before a lot of things, you know, before kind of selling Sunset or Bungalow, or before, you know, people began to cotton on to the fact that presentation is so important. As a business coach, because that was what I was doing at the time, I've got 1,000,001 ways of saying, oh, good Lord, you can't possibly sell it looking like this. You know, we would sit down in the kitchen over a coffee. I still do it now, you know, where we would just talk about somebody's goals, because there's always a reason for somebody selling a house. It's never because they wake up in the morning and decide it's a really good idea to sell the house. You know, it's a horrible process.
Could I just drill down on that quickly, Elaine, and ask that? So one of the things that Dave, who's not with us today, has got a great saying that I use quite often, but I'm just thinking for the listeners. So we often say, we're no longer selling your house, you're selling your buyer's next house. But when you're sat across the table from a potential client, like what's a nice way of saying we need to clear your junk? Like what does the expert say?
Fortunately, James, I think now I've built a reputation that people know that when I go in, especially if I go in, because I've got a great team, if I go in, it's kind of the big guns are coming. And I'm going to sit down and say, you can't, you know, we need to get rid of your junk.
Great.
I've earned that. But certainly back in the day, well, and even now, you know, I will, first of all, and I think my team are pretty good at it, especially in an occupied house. An empty house is a little bit easier, as you know. Yeah. But let's talk about the occupied properties, where you're sitting down with somebody who's perhaps lived there for 20 or 30 years in our world, sometimes even more than that. And they bought in a time when Rightmove perhaps didn't exist or was in its infancy. They bought in a time where certainly people didn't advertise houses on Instagram or Facebook or, anywhere else, that it was very much the newspaper or the newsagent's window. And the only photograph that was ever important was the front of the house. Nothing else was important because people went to look. So there's a big education piece for the people that we work with in having that conversation and saying, look, what are you trying to achieve here, basically? Why are you moving? And that might be because they're downsizing, because they want to travel more, so they want to lock up and leave for their retirement, if you like. We've worked for people who are actually building boats in the barns that they've got because they're going to sail around the world next, need to get rid of the house. Or at the other end of the scale, it might be because they're about to have another child, for example, and they're upsizing, or because one partner has got an exciting new job at a different end of the country. So the sale is essential. So once you've established that the sale is essential, it's a much more straightforward conversation, because at that point, it's an explanation of how now the house has to become their financial gateway to the next life stage that they're looking to achieve. And in order to maximize the finances they're going to have available for the next stage, then we really have to play the game, if you like, of attracting the buyers who are absolutely looking for a period home with 6 acres, with equestrian facilities, with an Aga kitchen, for example, in the most difficult scenarios that we deal with. And you're trying to attract that family who believe that living in the country is something like they're flicking through the pages of Country Living when they're sitting in their in their home in London and dreaming of getting away from the smoke, from the noise, from the busyness, from that style of life. But they actually believe that moving to the country looks like country living, that actually we're not all up to our knees in mud most of the time, that houses aren't full of all the junk and the dogs and the and the small horses that come into the kitchen when it's cold and wet outside. So we have to make it look like country living for them, and that really is important. And so we have a lot of conversation around that kind of thing, and explain what that type of buyer is looking for these days, which is very different to what the seller was looking for when they were buying that house. Because in those days, what we all looked for in those days was something we could put money on.
Yeah.
Something that we could do.
So can I drill down? I'm going to ask you, because I know you've got loads of great data. So when we position staging and styling to people, obviously we don't have, we've got examples and anecdotal evidence where, maybe we've taken it off another agent, and as a result, we did this, and this, and we achieved this. I mean, we had one in particular where previous agent, best offer they had was 1.4. We got into the house and said, right, you need to do this, this, and this. We didn't actually add furniture in. What we did was we stripped a lot of it out, and we ended up selling it at 1.55. So we've got some good anecdotal evidence for brochures. But as someone that is an expert in their field, I know you've got access to loads of data. If someone's sitting in front of, let's say, a would-be seller that they think they need to stage and sell staging to, what hard-hitting figures could you give in terms of data?
So we did a long-term analysis. So it was actually 9 years. And the reason we did 9 years rather than the 10 years of the life of my business is because 20EA could just go back 9 years with their comparable data. So we did a 9-year study earlier this year of the comparison of our staged properties versus national data across the same period. And what we found was that our staged properties, first of all, and let's bear in mind that across that 9 years, we've gone through all kinds of different markets, buyers markets, sellers markets, the super hot market coming out of COVID, the completely crashed market at the beginning of COVID, all of those things. And we found that the stage properties are 5 times more likely to achieve the first asking price, so the price that the property goes on the market for. So 5 times more likely than unstaged properties, equivalent unstaged properties. They're 18%, so pretty much 1 in 5 more likely to achieve above the asking price. And they're 7 times less likely to go through the whole thing of a price reduction and to achieve below the asking price. So that's huge, isn't it? Because so many properties, especially, kind of current market, there are price adjustments going through.
Is that on homes that you've completely staged? Is that
no? That's on our whole portfolio, Ian. So things that we have gone in and zhuzhed up, ready for photos. So where we've done pretty much what James was just describing, perhaps go in and kind of curated what's there, taken stuff out and zhuzhed it up right the way through to the 10,000 square foot properties where we fully furnish. So the whole lot. Yeah, we've got broken down data. I'm just pulling up on my other screen, just pulling up another slide, which says, broken down data. If it's an occupied property, for example, then it's 103%. It's likely to go for 103% of the asking price on average across those years. If it was, and interestingly, going back to what you were just saying, James, if it was previously on the market with another agent, without changing the asking price, our stats say that it will go for 110% of the asking price when it's remarketed. So exactly like the example that you've just cited, that you're likely to get 110% just on staging without doing the price alignment.
That's powerful enough alone, isn't it? I mean, that's, you said to somebody, would you like another 10% of your price for your house? I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? So let's break that down then. So I did pre-warn you I was going to ask you this before the podcast started, and obviously it is a generalization and no one is going to hold you to anything. But just so if someone's listening to this now going, this sounds absolutely incredible and amazing, but what does it cost? So let's use an example of, I don't know, a 2,000 square foot, 5-bedroom executive house, for example, that's empty. If you were going to, well, actually, let's start from the beginning. Let's start really small. So from the basic zhuzh, and that's a technical term. We use a zhuzh.
I found out how to spell it the other day. It's I think it's ZHUZH.
What is it? What's the actual is there a definition of it as well? Is there?
Yeah, it's zhuzh. That's the definition, James.
That's it. Well, we all know what it means. So let's go from let's say that house that is occupied, and it needs you diplomatically put it as curating. It needs curating. What is something like this? If someone says, right, okay, well, we work with Lemon and Lime Interiors. They're going to come round. What's a ballpark? Where does it start from? Where does it go to?
Okay, so that curating can take anything from half a day if we're just looking for the photographer coming in and we're basically going in, gathering stuff into boxes, into a sacrificial room, if you like, so a room that we're not necessarily going to photograph. And tidying up. We're not doing it ready for viewings. We're doing it purely for photography. And that kind of half a day with a couple of people from my team will come in at around £500. So that's
really quite affordable then, really.
Yeah. So that would be the starting level. We've had properties where I've had a team of 3 people in for an entire month, every single day.
Oh, wow.
Curating. And that will be the whole house. It will be the barns, the outbuildings, everything. And clearly the cost of that is significantly more than that.
Of course, yeah.
So it is a little bit of how long's a piece of string question. But if it's just zhuzhing up for photos, then we can start at kind of the £500 mark. We generally, the stats that we, or the numbers that we put out around cost is to say that if you've got an occupied property that isn't a disaster area, in other words, and I just had going through my head then one that we did, again, that had a huge American barn, but it had been lived in for about 10 years by a hoarder. And the couple were separating. That took an awful lot of just getting stuff out of there. But on average, we would say that if you need some help with decluttering and then styling it ready for photos and viewing, so getting it viewing ready too, you can average about somewhere between 0.25 and 0.5 of the guide price.
Fine.
So that would give you an average value. If you're looking at partially furnishing, so in the example where perhaps somebody has divorced, or somebody's passed away and there's a bit of usable furniture left in the house and it needs some additions to appeal to the target buyer, then we might be looking at somewhere around 1% of the asking. If it's a bigger property and it needs completely furnishing, then we say to people allow up to about 1.5%.
How does that work then? So is that something you take up front? Is it something that you take at the end, or do you take a deposit?
In general, we will take we'll take payment up front. Now, the main reason for that is that if we're needing to go out and buy a stock of furniture, for example, to go into a property, and certainly in busy times, then we can be buying a lot of furniture to put into a house, and it allows us to go and buy the right furniture. We have a huge stock of furniture, but what we don't do is a package, if you like, that goes from one house to another house. We look at the house, we do anything from kind of tiny beamed cottages through Georgian rectories to 10,000 square foot new builds in a very nice country village. So the furniture for those types of property aren't the same at all. Yeah. And so we have to make sure that we've got the right furniture. So that's generally why we prefer to take payment up front. We sometimes.
Why shouldn't you as well? I do feel like as agents sometimes, and then there's a big sort of controversy in the industry at the moment about what we as agents, me and Dave, like to take a minimum of 500 up front, sometimes £1,000. Sometimes we're taking $3,000 up front. Why wouldn't you? I wondered if there was like a no sale, no fee, because you're providing a service either way, and people would just give them an inch to take a mile. Sorry, you were just continuing on to say, so we've gone from part furnishing to almost fully furnishing, but then you also do a bit more, don't you? Because I think wasn't there a project that you did in Lincolnshire with the By Design guys?
Yes.
I think David Lindley talked about it. There's like a big manor house where you'd gone in and done even more like decorating and bits and pieces as well.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite houses of all time. If it had been anywhere except where it was, I might have bought it. But this project, it was just a bit too far into Lincolnshire for me. But yeah, I mean, that one had a lot of stonework, external stonework, beautiful house, but it had been very, very neglected for a lot of years. Yeah. And it had tenants, and it had all kinds of, just fly infestations, just all kinds of issues with it. And we got some repair work done on the stonework externally and repainted the outside. It was fully painted. So obviously we had to be a bit careful because it was a listed building. So we had to make sure that we were doing that all in keeping. We then went right through internally, stripped out. It had a hallway that you could have played football. It was absolutely huge. And the whole carpet was bright red. Now, you can imagine, you can't photograph red, you'll know this, you can't photograph red for love nor money. And the carpet right the way through was red. So we stripped out the carpets and put in something that was a bit calmer. We did a lot of painting, and we had to do painting with internal scaffolding because the ceilings were so high.
Wow.
And then we fully furnished it and got a great sale. We had to get a local farmer to come, cut all the hedges, just top out the field. There was 4 acres of land around it. Top out the field. We had to do some repair work to the septic tank outside because the lid of that was falling in. So it had been very neglected. We had to re-gravel the drive there as well. It was a lot of work, but that house had been on the market. I mean, I had spoken to the agent about it a year, maybe 18 months before we actually did anything, and they decided to market it without doing anything. Because of the potential costs. And I think they had one offer which was well under $1 million, and the house was being marketed, I think, at $1 million at that point. They had an offer that was well under. Decided eventually to take it off the market. We did the work. It was remarketed at 1.5 because that was literally, it had so much work done to it. It was so much better than it had been before. And they got more or less, I don't know exactly what they got for it, but they got more or less that for it from an open day that they had just after it relaunched. So
it makes a big difference. You think about the demographic of buyer at that end of the market. It's never really money. It's more about how it feels and time. And people are time poor. People don't want to buy. People, if they're going to buy a project, they're going to do, as you've just said, they're going to pay under $1 million for it.
Yeah.
And get somebody in and do it and then make, the most of their investment. But the reality is people are time poor, and the amount of time that we've gone into places and, just like I say, a zhuzh has been done. And it's made, I mean, like in one instance, I think you just said, 150K difference between us and the previous agent for a bit of curating, a little bit of decorating by the sellers. But, do you want to just give it away, or do you want to maximize? You used some great language earlier, actually, about using it as the vehicle to maximize there. What was the word you used? It was the wording you used, something like you maximize their asset to help them move on to the next chapter, basically.
Yeah, and it is exactly that. It's this financial gateway thing, isn't it? Where actually you're maximizing their finance.
That was it, financial gateway. That was great.
Yeah, so that they can move to the next stage of their life. And that's really important. It's really important. And you're right. You're absolutely right. These days, people are time poor. And also, they're looking at, when they're getting excited about buying a new house, they're not looking on, most people these days aren't looking on Rightmove when they're getting excited about buying a new house. That might be where they go to see what's possible for them to buy. But before that, they're going through Instagram, they're going through magazines, they're seeing, all kinds of things out there on the internet. They're looking at Pinterest, they're looking at all kinds of different platforms. And what they're seeing there are beautiful properties that have had interior design applied to them, that have had a lot of work done. And the imagery is fantastic. And then they go on to Rightmove. There's a huge jump. That's to be a huge jump in what they thought they were going to get.
Yeah.
And what's actually available. And that's a real, realignment of possibility, isn't it? So if you can showcase something on Rightmove that's as close to the experience that they've had when they were getting excited about in thinking about what was possible for them, if you can actually show them something on your website or on one of the portals that is very close to that Instagram aspirational house that they've just seen, they're going to come and look at it. Of course they are, because then they're going to stand in the beautiful kitchen or the gorgeous outdoor space that's flowing from the sitting room, and they're going to be whizzing around that with their phone. They're going to send that little video or those photos to their friends or their family and say, hey, this is amazing. What do you think? And while they're still standing in the house, they're already getting approval. They're already getting friends and family saying, oh, yeah, great, go for it. you don't really then have to do anything. I mean, I know, you guys do a huge amount in terms of progression and so on, but in terms of the sale, if you get the marketing right up front, people will arrive, all their mates will be saying, yes, go for it, and job done,
Yeah.
And it's obviously, you're then getting it over the line, but they've fallen in love because it's very close to their aspirational, their mood board. Everybody does vision boards, don't they? Particularly kind of younger generations all do vision boards now before they think about their house move. If nothing on Rightmove looks anything close to their vision board, then, I was doing some training with, we had franchising the business, and I was doing some training with our new team at the beginning of the week. The very first house I pulled up, it was completely coincidental. The very first house I pulled up in the area for one of them, that we were looking at, just to see what her target market might look like for going to chat to agents. Every single bed in the property, it was a 4-bed property, every single bed hadn't been made, and it was on Rightmove. That's not aspirational. Sorry, it's just not. And I don't think any longer. People say to me, "Oh, well, surely people can see past my clutter." Yeah, they absolutely can. They don't want to. It's rude. They don't want to. They think that if you don't care enough to tidy up before you get the photographer in or the videographer in, you're not going to care enough to chase the solicitor or to make sure that sale gets across the line. You probably haven't cared enough to get the roof repaired or the fascias painted. That if you don't care, everything you put out there says, I don't care. And if that's an unmade bed or the loose seat up, then both as a seller and as an agent, the message that you're giving is, I don't care.
And that's why a lot of agents get cheap fees, though, isn't it? Because they just don't care. They want to do the basics.
No, yeah, but they're not even doing the basics. The basics. People, it fascinates me because I came into this industry completely, without really knowing very much about it. I've been around for a long time now. And what fascinates me is that if I talk to agents about marketing, 9 times out of 10, that agent will talk about marketing themselves in order to get listings. It is very rare that when I talk about marketing to an agent, the first thing they talk about is marketing properties for their client.
Ian, you got something you wanted to ask?
Interesting.
Well, no, I just agree with everything you've said. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we've been so successful is because we've been absolutely fastidious with marketing our clients' homes, and even if we've not had lemon and lime in to stage, we always stage it ourselves with their existing furniture and style the rooms long before a camera comes anywhere near it. And if you can be consistent with everything you do across every single listing, like things like we never have a car on the drive, we never have windows open when we're doing external photographs. We always have bifolds open. We have things that we do on every single property without fail. I have a coronary if a cushion isn't straight on a sofa when I've seen. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. That happens in our office all the time, Ian.
I've literally before now I've sent that off to be CGI'd so that the cushion's straight. I've done that several times, and I think that it's that consistency and attention to detail across everything you do that then feeds into marketing your company to new clients, doesn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah. You can work really, really, really hard to market yourself as an agent. If when people jump onto your website to have a look at properties that you sell and they're really not good, then actually what they're seeing is that you don't care as an agent. Whereas if you're doing exactly what you're saying, Ian, and everything looks amazing, then people will think, gosh, they really care about their clients.
Yeah. And that's a good saying, isn't there? How you do anything is how you do everything.
Exactly.
And if you can't be bothered to tidy up and you're not worried about how a house is presented, then what are you going to be like as an agent to deal with in terms of everything else that comes with it?
Plus, at the mid to higher end especially, people are proud of their homes. So when their home goes on the market, they know that all of their friends and their social circle are all going to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you can be, certainly if you can be first in the area like like James is, if you can be first in your area to be the agent that really takes pride in marketing your clients' homes, they will absolutely love you for it. You know, they will tell all their friends and they will spread the word for you. You don't have to do any marketing.
No, and that's exactly true. And I think I mean, I we've worked with you guys and see what you do, and everything looks amazing. And then you don't have to go out and consistently sell yourself because your clients are talking about you. And that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, it is at that level because you need ultimate trust, don't you? Stuff over 1 million, 1.5, 2 million plus. They're discussing it in the restaurant, aren't they, on a Saturday night with their friends? They're not asking for bloody recommendations on Facebook for estate agents, are they? They're speaking to their friends at the golf club or in the grounds.
They need somebody that is trusted in the area. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious that we're coming to the end of the pod, and I just wanted to ask you a couple of quick fire questions, if I may.
Sure.
What's from your perspective? What's the difference between a good estate agent and an exceptional one when it comes to marketing luxury homes?
A good estate agent will talk about, well, we need to do some professional photography. We'll get the videographer around, and here's a list of things that you need to do before the photographer comes round. So they will be giving some advice, often as a list. And they will be using the professional services if they're a good estate agent. An exceptional estate agent will take the pain of getting the house ready for market away from their client. They won't just be giving them advice, they'll be walking with them to do that. So whether you do it as agents and go in and help them, or whether you get in professional help, so you get in us, for example, and you get in professional help, and you're not just giving advice, you're getting experts in to help. And then when the professional photographer comes in and the videographer comes in and the drone photography comes in, then the house is absolutely market ready, so that every asset, whether it's the brochure, whether it's the portal listing, whether it's an advert in the local press, for example, Cheshire Life or whatever, then actually everything looks amazing.
And then one more question then for you. There's a bit of a multifaceted question. So if obviously a lot of agents listen to this pod, so any agents that are working with developers or vendors on tight budgets, what are your top 3 staging priorities that deliver maximum impact?
Okay, where they're working on tight budgets, and when you say with developers, in other words, with empty properties.
Yeah.
So really hard if it's an empty property to do anything on a super tight marketing budget, because empty properties need furniture. Empty properties look much smaller without furniture. So bedrooms, for example, without a bed in, people will imagine that you can't get a king size bed into a property which hasn't got a king size bed in. So I think without furniture, it's very difficult. It's also, and I've tried it on LinkedIn a number of times, tell me which of these properties is on the market at 200,000 and which is 2 million. And if what you're showing is a picture of an empty room, you can't tell. People will get it wrong all the time. You can't tell. So I think my advice to developers is always to build in the budget, not just for your developers will say, well, I built in a marketing budget. I've built in 1.5% to pay the estate agent when he sells it, when she sells it. They need to build in more than that as a marketing budget. They need to be building in 2.5% or 3% for the back end, so that they can afford to get it staged and then get a good estate agent to sell it with them. So developers, I don't think there is a quick fix. If we're talking about occupied properties, so homeowners who are still living in their property, then First of all, and I always say it, and it is a bit of a plug, I'm afraid, but I would always say, I wrote a book which tells them exactly how to do it themselves.
We've got that.
Yeah, brilliant. So exactly how to do it themselves. It's whatever it is, $4.99 on Kindle. Download it from Amazon. Message me, I'll send you a copy. But take advice and do that. And then secondly, I think smell is probably the most off-putting thing. It will stop people even crossing the threshold into your house. So make sure that if you've got the photos right, then actually the house doesn't smell of wet dog, cigarette smoke, old carpets. That smell, particularly if it's been lived in by older people, then the smell is hideous. Sort it out.
Smell it now; it's in the back of my nostrils.
Well, an agent sent me a set of photos and said, "What can you do with this?" And literally, it was a set of photos. Jumped on a Zoom call with him and said, "Actually, I can't do anything with it until you've got rid of the smell in that house." He said, "How can you tell it smells from a Zoom call?" Okay. I said to him, "Does it smell?" He said, "Yeah, it smells absolutely dreadful." She had 32 cats. But you could tell that from the photos.
God.
So, do it yourself, get rid of the smell. And then if you can afford to put a fresh lick of paint around, particularly if the house was last decorated in the late 80s, early 90s, and we see a lot of those, even the ceiling is Farrow & Ball Retro Room red,
Yeah.
Paint it white.
That's perfect. Well, I really appreciate your time. So anyone that doesn't know who you are, where to find you, where can they find Elaine Penhaul, and where can they follow you? Give yourself a plug.
Okay, so we are Lemon and Lime Interiors. Find us on the website. We are based in the Midlands, but we work nationally. Follow me on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Facebook. Just get in touch.
Definitely recommend the book as well. Like, two members of my team have both read Sell High, Sell Fast. It was Chris and Matt that gave us a copy, wasn't it, Ian? When we popped down to PVS.
That was very early on, actually, before we did any work for you, or before I knew either of you. Yeah. Chris told me that he'd given you a copy. Yeah,
he gave us all a copy each, didn't he? Me, you, and Dave. We went for video for a day, and that's really good. And say two members of my team have read it, taken it on board, and I think it's absolute gold. So if you are listening to this and you are interested in staging, styling, furnishing, then reach out to Elaine. And thank you so much for your time, Elaine. It's good to meet you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.